Now, these samples grouped inside a sequence of or series of chunks, they have the same characteristics. You take the samples with the same characteristics and then you group them together on the run of chunks, and then those chunks, they've got offset, which is basically the starting point on the starting point of that specific chunk. So then you are able to use other boxes that are inside the stbl box to be able to tell like the size of the chunk that you are reading. Then you will know you will now know to read from where to where. And then sample per chunk will tells you the number of samples inside each chunk, and then sample description index gives you the integer that describes the integer that describes the index of the sample entry that this sample that describes. Okay, sample description. The sample description index is an integer that gives the index of the sample entry that describes the samples in this chunk. The index will range from 1 to the number of samples to the number of samples in the sample description box. Does that make sense? I'll write code to show you how to make use of these tables, and I will explain to you how I did that. I was checking the standard on how this actually works, and I've realized that, hey, you know, the information that you would really need that can save you a lot of time, they sell it. So if you're willing to buy, you can check on the ISO standard on audio and video coding. There's a standard ISO IE 14496. 14496 is the standard, but it's for sale. It's not for free. But once you buy that standard, you are going to get a lot of things clearer there, and that could save you a lot of time, because the free documentation that is out there on the internet, it doesn't really go deeper into some of the most crucial elements of the standard. But the ones that you are going to pay for, I promise you, you will not actually cry for your money, because it's just going to save you a lot of time. But anyway, I am going to also go through this and write some code with you and explain to you what all of this means, and how do you actually use the information within these tables in order to be able to get to the location of your samples. And remember, once we understand how to get the location of the samples, we are not done. We're still going to have to go through the H264 standard, in where we are going to now learn how the H264 standard actually stipulate that the data should be placed, and then how to decode that data. So there's a standard that stipulates how the Mp4 file should store data, and there's a standard that stipulates how the H264 should stipulate the data. Because an Mp4 file, I'll have to emphasize this, it's not actually a format as such. It's basically a container, which means it contains a file within itself, like a folder. But an Mp4 file, you are able to store a lot of information that relates to the file that is inside it. You are able to store information, the creation date of that file, the codings that were used to encode that file. There's just a lot of information that you are able to store within an Mp4 file, unlike a folder. as per my analogy, where you just put a file. An mp4 file is really able to actually store a lot of information that relates to it. And again, an mp4 file may not contain the actual data. The actual data uh, may be stored separately from the mp4 file that describes it. The mp4 file may just contain information about a certain format of data, like the H.264 or the AAC, depending on the file that you, or the file format that you've decided to put inside your mp4 file. And inside an mp4 file we store time-based data. That means data that is accessed and processed time-based. So here we are learning on how the mp4 does all of that. And once we understand how this data is placed inside an mp4 file, we're now going to have to look at how to decode, to get the meaning out of that data, like how our images are placed and how to decode them. So we're still going to have to go and look for the standard that describes the data that is stored within our mp4 file. It's an interesting journey if you are someone who really loves to learn. I love learning. I love, like, looking at new things on how these things are done, and I've always had all these questions, and I took my time, like, to investigate. And it's important to be very patient, when you learn. Very important to be patient when you learn.